This is a video about tracing exercise 7.1. You can find the code for this exercise in the GitHub repo for ThinkJava under the Chapter 7 area. So I'll get started by labeling my first line that I'm executing, and maybe I'll start the lines over here. Since I'm in main, first thing I do is I call loop, which is down here. So my next item of execution is here. And at that point I see that the variable n has come into play. So I will keep track of where I am with that by making some places to track variables somewhere on my page. So there's n there. Potentially may add some more variables in here. Yes, indeed, when I get to line 3 or execution line 3, I see that I now have an I variable as well, and it gets set to n. Okay, so then what variables are in these, which I should have done on step 2. What value is in n? Well, 10, because I called loop with 10, and so that 10 flows into n. So 10 is the value that goes into n, and then on line 3 I get set equal to n, so they're both 10. Okay, moving on. Now I hit the while loop, and it looks like 10 is greater than 1, so I do go down here and I print out I. So so maybe I'll make myself a place for output. So it looks like I'm going to print out a 10. And then line 6, continue here. It asks if that I value is a multiple of 2. And 10 is a multiple of 2. That is, when I divide by 2, I take the remainder, it is equal to 0. So I do go down into here. I gets divided by 2 and stored back into I. So I becomes 5. And then since I've just completed the if, I skip the else completely, and so that skips me down to the end of the while loop, and that means I'm going down around the while loop another time for step 8. I is now 5. 5 is greater than 1, so I do print it in step 9. And there we go. Print out the 5. In step 10, I test I to see if it is a multiple of 2, and it's not, so I fall down into the else for step 11. And you can either put the 11 here or down here, it doesn't really matter. So line 12, I add 1 to I and store the result back in I. I becomes a 6. And now I am done with my else, so I go down, there's the end of the else, there's the end of the while loop. So for step 13, I'm back around at the top. Here is checking I to see if it's greater than 1. 6 is greater than 1, so I print it. Here we go. Is 6 a multiple of 2? That's the test we do on line 15 here, or step 15. It is. So at step 16, I will divide it by 2. Now I skip the else because I just finished the if, and I'm back around to the while loop again for step 17. 3 is greater than 1, so I print it. Now I test to see if it's a multiple of 2, and it is not a multiple of 2. So that means I end up down here for step 20, inside the else. Add 1, store it back in I, and back around to the while loop. Here I am at line 21, or step 21, running out of space to write my numbers. 4 is greater than 1, so I will go ahead and print it. And here it is. It is also a multiple of 2, so step 23 takes me down to step 24, where I divide it by 2. And now I'm back around to the while loop. I think I'll switch, since I'm running out of room on the left-hand side here, I think I'll switch over here to the right. Sorry about the confusion. So that was step 24, which means now I'm at step 25. Just continue over here. At step 25, I is still greater than 1, so I do print it. 2. 27, I is actually a multiple of 2, so here we go. On line 28, I will divide divided by 2, and 1. Then I'm done with the else, so that means I'm back up to the while loop for step 29. 1 is not greater than 1, and so at this point, because I has made it down to 1, I'm exiting the while loop. At this point, I'm now actually also done with the loop method, so I return to the one number less than the first place I was, and looks like this is the first number I had, so I'm looking for a 1. That must mean that this is where I was called. It is, and I'm done with the program.